Hello and welcome to another edition of Foot Fetish. This is Gail from Burger Sewing and Vacuum in Manassas, Virginia, and today I'm going to talk about the 1/4 inch feet. And Baby Lock has 4 different 1/4 inch feet for their machines. These, if you look at them, they just have a single hole, so you're going to be stitching with the needle in the center position. These two have oval holes for those quilters that like to do what they call a scant 1/4 inch seam. That way you can move your needle a little bit to the left and right. You'll also notice that these feet are narrower than these. These will give you better contact with your feed dogs because they are so wide and deep, but these still give you good contact. They're just a little bit different. The other thing about these feet that is really nice is they have markings. So you'll have markings at a 1/4 inch in front of the needle where the needle is, and this one is 1/8 behind the needle, this is a 1/4 inch behind the needle. These also have the markings on here for the 1/4 in front, 1/8 where the needle is, 1/8 in back, 1/4 inch in back, and also in here you have all the lines. These lines go all the way across. So you can see all the lines. So you always know where you are front to back. And that's important for quilters because a lot of times you want to sew up to a 1/4 inch from the edge of something and then you need to pivot and turn. So you can just watch and look at your foot to know where that is. These two have your edge guides, which I love because I have a tendency to wander off the edge of my foot. So these would help me with that. And then the two bigger ones with the oval holes, they also have the locking pin, and that's to help you go over those thick layers of fabric, like your thick seams and that sort of thing. So I'm going to start out with this foot, and then I'm going to move along. So we'll get these guys out of the way. And I have the needle in the center position. I'm sewing on a crescendo today. And I'm going to grab my threads, pull them to the back. I'm going to put my foot on. And I like to get my threads underneath and into that hole. And if I get my fabrics lined up right, it'll usually sew a little bit better. And I'm just going to start out. Now, you notice if I line the fabric up with this edge, it's going to be more than a 1/4 inch. If I took a ruler out and I measured it, that's more than a 1/4 inch from here to the edge of the fabric. It's actually to right there. So I need to move my fabric over just a smidge. I also have my 1/4 inch marking on my bobbin cover right there. So that would help me also. So I will just start to sew. And I'm going to have to try and make sure that I keep it lined up right here. And I'm guiding into my foot. So I'm actually looking right here and I'm guiding into right there. And I'm not doing the best job, but you get the idea. So there we go. Of course, I would start at the very end of that. And you can see that I did not so great. I kind of wandered off. This is why I am one of the people that really needs to use the one with an edge guide. So I'm going to put the one with the edge guide on now. So let me just slip that foot on there and get my threads back. And I'm going to then line it up. Now this one I don't have to worry about. I know I have my edge guide right there. I know if I line my fabric up with my edge guide, I am going to be right where I want to be. Grab that bobbin thread. Okay, actually trying to grab it from my other seam. And I'm going to hold on to these threads and I'm going to start to sew. And now I'm going to be a lot better. And I think I need a new needle in there. Oops. And I can just sew. Now, you notice I'm not using the thread cutter on the machine because I like to have a bit of a tail that I can hold on to when I start my next seam. They do have a wonderful thread cutter, but I'm not using it. Now, if you look at this seam, it's a lot straighter than my other one. My other one I kind of wandered around. This one is nice and straight because I have my edge guide. So I am definitely an edge guide type of person. I love those edge guides. Now we're going to do this 1/4 inch foot with the oval. Now once again, if you look at the 2 feet, this bar comes down right here. So I have to line up. I'll put this foot down. I need to line up right here on the foot, okay? So I'm going to line up right there, but with that oval opening, I am going to move my needle over to the right just a couple clicks. So I'm just going to move it over just a little bit to take into account my my fibers, how thick my fibers are. So when I fold over for my seam and I press it open, I will be a true 1/4 inch. So I'm going to grab my threads once again, hold on to them, and I'm going to start to sew. And now you'll see that my needle is just over. Now if you need it to be over a little bit more, I can move it over just a little bit more even, and that should still go through that hole just fine. And now I'm going to get my scant 1/4 inch. I can tell I cut my fabric out so straight. And that's going to give me a scant 1/4. So when I press it and fold it, I will then have a true 1/4 inch seam. So it's a little bit smaller. Now let me grab my other foot. The last one. Oops, and I knocked my camera. Now this one, because I have my edge guide, I usually sew a lot faster too when I have my edge guide, because I know where my 1/4 inch is and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to sew right on there. I'm guiding into that guide right there, and I can sew and it'll be just all beautiful and perfect. And there we go. So those are the 4 different feet that Baby Lock has. Now I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to move it over a little bit, how you would use those markings to, say, sew on your binding. So I'm just going to pretend this is a binding. I'm going to sew on. Let me get my foot back on there. And I'm going to line this up. So my needle is slightly over, and I'm just, actually I was going to show something else first. Sometimes they show how you can sew with a 1/4 inch on either side. You can quilt with it with a 1/4 inch on each side. So you can see that I'm using my guide. I'm putting it right in what they call the ditch or the seam line, and I could go and I could quilt like that. And they actually have a picture of that on their directions. If you look at the picture that they show them doing their 1/4 inch little seams right there. Or I could also, I'm going to pretend I'm sewing on a binding. So if I were to put on a binding, I would line that up, and then I would just sew on down. And I think it would also help if I put my glasses on. I could see a little bit better. Those of you with older eyes understand that. So I'm going to sew. Now you can tell that I did such a great job sewing this together, so we'll ignore that. And what I'm going to do is I am actually going to sew on down, and I'm going to put a little pin here that marks the end of my fabric. So I'm going to go right to there, and sometimes it's a little bit harder when you have that bar there to know where that is, so you may want to mark it with a pin instead, but I am looking at this little mark right there. So I'm going to sew up until that mark is at my pin. So now I know I'm going to back tack now, just a little bit. Then I will cut my threads real quick just to make it easier. So I got to my 1/4 inch from the edge. Now I can do my little mitering that the quilters love to do. And now I can start out. Now if I wanted to start in, you know, 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch from that needle, I would just line it up with the lines here. Or you can start at the very end. I've seen people do it both ways. So then I could just start it out again and just sew on down. And then I would go to my 1/4 inch mark again. So there we go. So then I can have my mitered corner. Okay, so that's another way you would use your markings on there. So those are the 4 different 1/4 inch feet that Baby Lock has. Of course, some of us have all 4 of them, but pick which one you think would work best for you, whether you want just one with a single hole with the guide, or your oval hole if you need to do your scant 1/4 inches. So until next time, have fun sewing with your feet.